Welcome to my TikTok Friends, the podcast about the app where everyone goes viral. I'm your host, Dan Vadeboncoeur, and this week's guest is Rob Matsushita. Rob is a very cool person. You may already be familiar with his work if you know Chad Vader. Rob was a part of that awesomeness back in the early days of internet video. It was like 2007 or something like that. I don't know. We didn't really get into it. What we got into was what he does on TikTok, which is recap videos, as best as I can describe it. He basically recaps episodes of old sci-fi TV shows and other shows. We'll get into it in the episode. And I love them. I really enjoy his videos. I can follow along with the story of these shows. I can consume that content. It's a way for me to watch these shows without actually having to watch it. I think that's very cool. Rob's also a huge movie nerd. He doesn't frequently comment on my trivia videos, but I know he's playing because when he does comment, he always comments some obscure thing that only he knows. And he knows a lot. So anyway, let's get into it. This is my conversation with Rob Matsushita, and I'll come back on the other end to wrap up the show. So I can't remember. I mean, I do remember when I found you on TikTok, but I don't know if I've ever told you that I know who you were. I knew who you were before I met you on TikTok because of Chad Vader, because you're in Chad Vader. Yeah. And I may have mentioned that at some point, I think. But I mean, who remembers these little conversations we have on TikTok? Yeah, you were in Chad Vader. And I'm like, wow, that's one of the guys from Chad Vader. So I immediately followed you. But you're not posting anything having to do with Star Wars. Well, maybe a little bit having to do with Star Wars, tangentially. You were posting about Buck Rogers, and I thought that was just so cool. What made you decide to start with the Buck Rogers videos?
Oh, that's always the question, isn't it? Why Buck Rogers? Well, let's first take a step back and say, like, the reason why we're all on TikTok is COVID.
Right.
It's the only reason why we all tried Quibi.
Oh man, I didn't even bother with that one.
Quibi had some good stuff on it, but who in the hell sits down and watches a 7 to 8 minute video on their phone? Like at that point, like, cause it's whatever the opposite of perfect length is, because it's exactly too long to sit watching a thing on your phone. Never mind the fact that I'll watch a bajillion Savannah Moss videos for like a half hour on TikTok.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
But COVID. Anyway, COVID. Yeah. So I was working from home. I had a lot of downtime. And so I discovered that NBC.com had a lot of free content on it at that time. And one of the shows they had on there was a show called Hunter, starring Fred Dryer, which was like, it's like a TV clone of Dirty Harry. He even had like a "Make My Day" type catchphrase.
It's vaguely familiar. I think I remember the promos and stuff.
Yeah, he would go, "Works for me, works for me." He would say it in every episode, and in the opening credits. He had a gun named Simon, and so I was doing initially some content, just what I do with Buck Rogers, but I was initially doing it with Hunter, and no one was assimilating that content at all. No one. And I also kind of was like hit a point where I was like, I don't know if I want to necessarily do a deep dive on all of Hunter. That seems ridiculous. But I discovered they had all of Buck Rogers as well. Now, Buck Rogers, which I have been a fan of since I was a small child, since it first came out.
Yeah. What were the years again? Remind me. Early 80s, right?
Yeah, it would have been 1970. It was late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. So like first season was 79, second season was 79, 80. Mm-hmm. It's still very much a 70s show.
Yeah, I definitely got that vibe. I was just watching, I just was kind of going through some videos and seeing some trailers and stuff, and it did have a very much a Battlestar Galactica vibe. Yeah, similar. But I just want to kind of back up for a second and talk about what you do. What you do basically is you break down the episodes minute by minute, right? Is that how you do it? And it took me a while to figure out that that's what you were doing. Because I was like, it was like, okay, and then, here's what's happening next. And I wasn't sure if you were like just skipping ahead. I'm like, no, you're just going like a minute, talking about what happens in that minute, showing some clips, making some jokes. And then next minute, you just do that for every episode of Buck Rogers. And you're on the second season now.
Yeah.
Right. The second and final season. There was only 2 seasons, right?
There is sadly only 2 seasons of the show. No matter how hard I wish, you only really get 2 seasons. Really, you don't even get two, because like the second season is like a truncated half season
Okay.
because the episode Scarathradrax was so bad. I don't know if that's the reason why the show got canceled. Because like I feel like you're only ever one bad episode away from losing all of it.
Yeah, that time for sure. And yeah, that was a bad one. You just finished recapping that one recently, I remember.
Yes.
And that's just really just not. It's like all the bad decisions that could have possibly been made at the time were made, and that
I was
episode is
dreading
the
it.
result. Yeah.
Yeah, I was dreading it too because like because look, I feel sorry for everybody just sitting in the audience who has no idea who the hell I am or what we're talking about here. But
That's
to
okay.
explain, the second season of Buck Rogers had an episode's called Scarathradrax. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. It's just a bunch of
Clearly meant. It looks like someone just mashed the keypad of a. Is it a word they say in the show? I don't remember.
it looks like somebody just took all of their Scrabble letters and was like, "I win," like that's the show. That's
Yeah.
the episode. It is named for. It doesn't matter what it's about. There are the Buck Rogers encounters a group of little people that have telekinetic abilities, and at one point they assault Wilma, and it's terrible and it's awful. And the reason why I was dreading it so much is because there is a term that people have used for little people forever that is a slur,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to accept the fact that it is a slur, no matter how much you think it is or isn't, because you always kind of and I was more or less just rolling my sleeves, getting ready to be like, I don't want to have to go in the comments and be bad dad and say stop using that word.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it was only like once or maybe twice, and they stopped. Like I just came in, and I just was like, "Hey guys," I just tried to, instead of being the bad dad, I ended up being like just sort of tried to be the cool RA voice,
Yeah.
"Hey guys, we're all having fun, but that word's actually kind of hurtful, and I'm reasonably sure, there are people who have dwarfism that could be watching these videos. They might be hurt by that. Please, let's all be sensitive." And nobody was a jerk about it.
Good.
Some people just stopped commenting outright.
Well, sometimes it happens, but I find overall my experiences on TikTok have been positive. I mean, occasionally you'll get the troll coming in,
Yeah.
but most of the time people are responsive to your content. And it was so. Let's back up. You went to Buck Rogers, and that found an audience, right? You
Yes.
on TikTok.
Yeah.
That was the hit, not Hunter, but Buck Rogers
Buck
was the
Rogers.
winning
Well,
formula.
yeah, because Buck Rogers captured a lot more. Amazingly enough, Buck Rogers captured a lot more of the cultural zeitgeist than Hunter did.
Well, it feels a bit like Battlestar. It all came from Star Wars, right? It was all a result of Star Wars. So
Yeah.
like, and a lot of us of that age in like who are now in our 40s and 50s were kids at that time, and there's a lot of nostalgia on TikTok. Holy shit, I just am baffled, like how many people just post old commercials and old TV shows and stuff like that. That's all they do, and there's so much of that on TikTok. I'm just
Yeah.
blown away.
And Glenn Larson was the guy who, he was the guy who created both Buck Rogers and Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
You also are going to see there's a lot of overlap between the shows. And somebody corrected me. I don't know. As far as like why the second season is so much different than the first season of Buck Rogers. The story that I heard, and I have to say, I heard this from somebody who knew the writing staff.
Mm-hmm.
But the story that I heard was that they thought the Battlestar Galactica was going to get canceled, so they took a bunch of script ideas. So the second season took a bunch of script ideas, which is why all of a sudden, instead of the first season, which is basically just James Bond in space, the second season, now we're on the ship, the Searcher, seeking strange new life forms and new civilizations, boldly going where no one has gone before. And it was mainly just because they had like all of these story ideas that they weren't going to be able to use because Battlestar Galactica was about to be canceled. And then it wasn't canceled, and then they had two different Battlestar Galactica shows.
But then it was eventually, right? Then it was.
Then it
canceled.
was. Then it was. People have requested I do Battlestar Galactica, and I should look it up what the TV schedule was. I never watched it.
Okay.
I never watched Battlestar Galactica because it was on opposite something else I watched. I don't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was I don't know. And I'd like to say it was something like Cool, but it was probably something like Three's Company.
Well, and yeah, of course, that was a very popular show. Hey,
Yeah.
and it was what was also weird for me is that as a kid, I did also watch Buck Rogers, but it was one of the very few shows that scared me so much that my parents wouldn't let me watch it anymore. So there was some
Yes.
image, and I still haven't been able to figure out what it was. Are you almost done? Does that mean you're almost done?
Yeah, I've
Season two?
got so there are 3 more episodes coming,
Okay.
and it's actually kind of a shame that these 3 episodes have to follow Scarathrax, because Scarathrax is just the most offensive, stupidest, silliest one in the whole group. And the next 3 are like, well, this one I'm doing right now is very much a Star Trek episode.
Mhm.
Um, and but the next 2 episodes are weirdly serious for the show. Like they show a distinct tone change um, in the last 2 episodes.
Okay.
One's called Testimony of a Traitor, where evidence arises that seems to suggest that Buck is responsible for the nuclear holocaust all the way back from season 1. Is he? Is it like the Manchurian Candidate? It is. It's kind of the Manchurian
Yeah.
Candidate episode. It's
Yeah.
all about how he like discovers that there's this whole like that he was also a super spy back in 1987.
Okay. He remembers all this
Um,
stuff.
yeah,
Oh man.
but whose side was he on?
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
and then okay, so that was one show, and so I don't remember the specific scene that freaked me out. I'm waiting for it to come up, so it hasn't come up. But I admit that I did not come in. I have not gone back to watch from the beginning because you started at the beginning of season 1, and I don't remember.
Which
I
one it
can't.
was.
What's that?
I think I know which one it was you're talking about because I remember you mentioning this on TikTok.
Oh, did I? Oh, okay. Did I already say what it was?
I think because it's funny because I think it came up because it's similar because it's so similar to the plot of V that I deliberately wore my V t-shirt when I was recapping this episode.
Oh, okay.
And that would be the what is it? It's not the Dorian secret, is it? Because that one's coming up. It's now I have to get out my phone. I said I
No,
wasn't going
don't do that. Don't do it. Do it. It's okay.
do it. Don't do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Don't. It's a. I don't want to get on this tangent, but I just.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's the one. And you already brought it up. V was the other show. V was the other TV show that had a scary scene that scares me so much that my parents wouldn't let me watch it. So it was V and Buck Rogers. And I just thought it was so weird that these were the 2 shows that you were recapping that scared me as a child.
Yeah.
And in V, I do know. V, of course, it was the lizard skin. Like they would rip off their skin and there were lizards underneath. And that terrified me as a child.
Yeah.
And that was the other series you were doing. So you did all of V and the mini series. That was a joy to watch, I gotta say. And I have those too. I have them on VHS somewhere, and I've watched them since. Like I remember when I first worked at Blockbuster Video, I was excited about getting to watch it because my parents wouldn't let me watch it as a kid.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my god, I get to finally watch this, and it's it's pretty good, but it doesn't stay good. It got pretty bad by the end of it.
The series I decided to not recap the regular series that followed
Oh, okay.
the final battle. And honestly, my followers were a little split as to whether or not I should. Some people were like, "Oh, you should; it'll be hilarious." But then there were some people who were sort of like, "Oh no, but it's so perfect. It's so perfect an ending right here, though." And the show kind of just ruins everything.
Right.
Like the show feels at times very much like a live action G.I. Joe cartoon. And I don't mean like it seems like the G.I. Joe movies like The Rise of Cobra or something like that. I mean, like it feels like there's one episode that is actually the exact same plot as an episode of G.I. Joe, where like it's another brainwashing episode where Donovan gets brainwashed into thinking that he's married and living in the suburbs. And his son is played by Mickey Cat in the regular TV series. Who used to be on the show Boston Public. It was in the movie.
Oh yes, I know who you're talking about exactly.
I mean,
I remember him from Friends.
Yeah. Oh, I love that dude. I think he's hilarious. I love that actor. I think he's great.
He just kind of that one guest spot. Yeah, for sure. Okay, well that's interesting. So V is another show you loved as a child, and that's where that came from. You just wanted to recap this. How long does it take you to make these episodes, or what's your process in making these episodes?
I'm so glad you asked. Because it's taken a while to like nail down a system. Usually when it comes to like any of the shows, because I'm also covering, because it's like I'm covering the 70s with Buck Rogers the 80s with V, and the 90s with Nowhere Man. These are all very good examples of what the decades were like, by the way, each show. That's why I picked the ones that I picked. But I'll usually go right at, I'll just start right at the beginning now. And I'll just, whenever, it's actually as simple as when a character is at a location and when they leave that location, I consider that a scene, usually. Sometimes it'll just, like sometimes I'll have to, and then I'll just have to decide. Usually, it's weird when you notice that like a scene is typically two people arrive at a location and it's over when they leave it. So while they're at that location, typically you learn one, maybe two important things on a TV show, usually just one. And once I figure out what that one is, then I can just, kind of cut that around. And then, like I'm also just sort of watching that snippet for like, in case anybody says something that is also a song lyric or something like that, or just sort of like, just a jokey observation or anything like that. Then I'll go ahead and do that. I'll frequently be giving myself notes while I'm doing the recording. I don't record with my phone, I record with a camera. And just because I thought I should make it look nice. And ultimately I kind of realized I hit the same wall that I think a lot of guys my age, I'm 50, I'm 52. And I hit the same wall that a lot of guys my age, I think, hit when they're on TikTok, which is I can't edit like this with my thumbs. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like I literally went to school to learn how to edit on more than one nonlinear editing system. I've been editing for a long enough time that I still use the term nonlinear editing, even though there's no such thing as linear editing anymore. So like that's basically kind of like how it all kind of shakes out. I just break it up into little pieces. And really honestly, the thing that is most important to me is that the audience knows what's going on. I was trying to explain TikTok to my mom, and I was saying how like what I'm doing with Buck Rogers is I'm splitting it up. I'm essentially turning Buck Rogers, the 70s Buck Rogers, into the 1930s Buck Rogers by splitting it up into like small chapters and having cliffhangers every episode, because I love cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Like I love that. I love doing that. And I love it when it's Friday and I know I can like lay a big one on people, with that.
That's pretty cool. I never thought of it. Sometimes you don't always see them in order. I find that's a bit of an issue with TikTok. Like and I'll have to go back if I catch something and I haven't seen your videos in a I'll go back to make sure I haven't missed something and catch up. So that's something you have to kind of keep on. Do these live anywhere else, or is it just on TikTok?
They say it's funny. I've done everything wrong when it comes to TikTok, because they say you shouldn't diversify. You should stick on one platform. I'm on TikTok. I'm also on Twitter, and I wouldn't be, but there are some people who only follow me on Twitter. So,
Well, I mean, there's still people who love, I guess, what Twitter used to be. I haven't been on there much lately. But I used to love it. I used to be all over Twitter, and now I don't feel like that's a lot of fun. I think TikTok has ruined me for all other social media. I really only have fun on TikTok. I can imagine just the response you're getting from people who also love these shows, and new people must find you all the time, right? Who just come across this stuff.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, the way that it's kind of set up, and one of the other reasons why it's nice to have this on more than one platform is that some of the actors who are in the shows that I cover are on some platforms and not others. So like on Instagram, for instance, I've been able to tag and get responses from a couple of people who were guest stars on Nowhere Man. Just recently, the costume designer for Buck Rogers started following me on Twitter, so I can't leave now. I'm also on Facebook because I'm also part of a Facebook group called the Buck Rogers Interactive Portal, and I post there all the time. And then just TikTok. It's TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Are kind of the big four. I mean, they say you shouldn't do like a part 3 or 4 or 8, and I'm like up to part. I'm like, V is told in like 88 parts. It's ridiculous.
But you know, I feel like I think those work. I see guys with like series that are going up to the 600s.
Yeah.
You know, like people just keep going and keep going, and I've stopped listening today quite a long time ago when it came to TikTok because they don't seem to get anything to know what's going on. And
Well,
people,
I
the people
figured.
who sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I figured the trick is, see, because part of the issue with TikTok is that, see, you have like over 10,000 followers. I'm still in the 6,000s. And I'm not saying like, screw you, pal, I'm coming for you. It's more like the fact that because you have 10,000, you can have playlists. But until I have that amount of followers, I don't. And that was for a while a really intimidating thing. And that's when I came up with the idea of having like 3 or 4 seconds of essentially what's just like a 3 or 4 second opening credit for each of them, so that when it popped up on your For You page, if you've been watching a bunch of these, like you recognize the format's
Yep,
always basically the same with each of them. So when it comes up, you immediately go like, oh, it's this guy. Okay.
it's
Like, so you,
exactly what I think.
yeah,
Oh, it's this guy. Oh, it's Rob, I think.
yeah,
But that's right, and you change it with every episode, so it does change every once in a while, and then oh yes, and that kind of clues me in. Sometimes I catch like the new one before I finish watching the last one, so I have to go back and catch up. I think it's
yeah.
great. I think it works really well.
I keep some things consistent, like the font and the overall style. Um, of the text. In the case of V, like I just kept it the
Mhm.
same thing, just the V logo uh each time, because it just that it was nothing was better than that. And V was the perfect. So that's actually been the toughest part of doing this whole process is because in some ways I actually kind of consider like I'm converting V to TikTok format. And as a result, so now you have to convert something that is in 16:9. And it was in the first season, the first miniseries was in 16:9, believe it or not. They did have it in widescreen format,
Hmm.
but having to convert that to like vertical shape of your phone, um, because I'm trying to make sure to not crop in unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah,
Like I try to make it look as much like this content was made for this platform.
yeah.
Like that's what I'm trying to do with every edit. But sometimes it's just not practical.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I imagine that, and getting into the more traditional TV where it's just 4:3 or whatever, that more square, that's a little bit more easy, more conducive to the TikTok format.
yeah, you can crop all the way in on that and it's just like a square. I still try not to
Yeah,
if I can help it, but like if you have like a scene where two characters are standing next to each other, you kind of have to.
yeah, and I can see that's too bad about the playlist because that would really help you. I think that would be great to have a playlist of just all the episodes of
Yeah.
everything you've done right
That's why
there.
I came up with the branding of the thumbnails, so that
Hmm.
you could go to my page and just look at the thumbnails and be like, oh, okay, so I can just get,
Yeah,
you can just at a glance, you can just get caught up,
that's right.
like you just keep scrolling until you find V. And like I can make playlists, I just can't share them on the page in the same way. So like
Mm.
when people comment on like a preview or something like that, or like, hey, did you cover Space Vampire, or did you cover, it's like, oh man, I'm trying to find this. I was like, oh, and instead of scrolling all the way down, I'll just copy the link to the playlist and I'll just put it in a comment,
Hmm.
or I'll like, DM it to somebody, or that kind of a thing. Yeah, if anybody ever wants to get caught up on V, just mention it in the comments and I'll just send you the thing. I'm more than happy to share
Well, you'll
all of
hit.
them.
I'm sure you'll hit 10,000 soon. You're not that far off, right? You got to be pretty close. It's
I hope
weird
so.
though, how these things kind of come and go, and you do hit like you can get a bunch of followers all at once if one of your videos goes viral, but that doesn't happen as often as it used to, right?
No.
It seems like it happens more and more when you start.
Yeah. I have a decent amount of followers in that. Like I have just enough followers to like keep going, but not so many followers that like people are starting fights with me all the time.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't never happen. I have a strange amount of there's it's not hard to figure out what my politics are if you follow me for long enough. But it is interesting that there are a few people with the opposite of my politics who have jumped in because Buck Rogers is very popular amongst conservatives. I don't know why. I don't know. There was a an article a while ago that referred to Buck Rogers as a unwoke show. And first of all, I take umbrage at that. And second, why what who's making this list?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's it's funny because you poke fun at that though. You poke fun at all the issues with the writing and with the what Wilma's wearing and with all the that it's part of like the fun of looking back at these things and going, look, these guys didn't realize what they were doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm on the show's side for the most, maybe not Scarathrax, but like I'm for the most part, I always wanted to make to be that I'm on the show's side. Like people have suggested, it's like, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? It's like I debated doing cop rock um for a while. And the only reason why I haven't done stuff like that is because it's like, well, but if I don't like the show, it's just mean. Like it just feels like it's mean. Like if I don't think that the show is very good. I was gonna cover more about the miniseries America, where it's spelled with a K, because it's all about like if Russia took over the United States. Is this miniseries that came out in the late '80s? It was the conservative answer to V.
Oh, okay. So it's like Red Dawn in the
It's
series?
exactly like Red
Okay,
Dawn.
okay.
It's like Red Dawn if it were like 17 hours long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's exciting as that may sound. If it were mainly about the politics of the situation and not as much about the gunfire.
Right.
Now I'm starting to lose a few of the other people with this whole. It wasn't a good show. It wasn't good. I watched about half of it, and I'm like, this can teach me nothing. It's not enjoyable. I don't agree with it, and I don't like it. And I'm not going to spend. I'm not going to spend time I could be spending with my wife editing this.
So Nowhere Man, the third show that you're working on from the 90s, that's another one you love. So that's one, but you, of course, you're older when that one came out. So why do you have such a connection to that show?
I think because I really love the short. When I wanted to pick another show, I wanted to pick something that was short lived, so that there was an end in sight.
Hmm.
I just felt like not a lot of people had heard of Nowhere Man. My
No,
wife
I'd never even realized it was a thing.
Yeah, because it just was like right in the pocket of the existence of UPN. And if UPN just had marketed the show just a little bit more shrewdly, they could have had like they could have had a hit on their hands, or it was their most popular show for a while, and people who were into it were genuinely into it, And I feel like every once in a while we all get into like a big show that's got a lot of mystery behind it. You're Lost, your Yellow Jackets,
Squid Game.
Squid Game,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, Squid Game, Alice in Borderland, that's another one, the Japanese one. And Nowhere Man but I wanted to cover Nowhere Man, but also kind of cover it in a way that was like a little more fair, in that like, and just say right from the jump, there are no answers. There are not going to be any answers in this show. It's not about that. It's the fugitive. The chase is the story, not why this is happening.
Well, and for me, it's just a pleasure to see who the guest star is going to be every week, because it's someone awesome every week. They have someone very, very cool. Like when it was Dean Jones and who was it the week? Was it Dean?
Oh, Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, and then Dean Jones. I'm like, holy shit, the Deans! Like it's got all the best Deans. And
both playing father figures.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but it's such an interesting story. And Bruce Greenwood is amazing. I've always loved Bruce Greenwood, although I didn't know this was a thing. And he's Canadian, so I always support the Canadian actors.
Yeah.
But such a good show, and I love watching it through your eyes. Like I've never seen this before, never even heard of it, but now I get to see it in little pieces thanks to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Frequently, what I am always trying, whenever I'm making fun of anything, I'm usually just kind of making fun of the time period. Or like, and I always take care to mention, like, I don't really care. Like when it's a thing that I like, it's just fun to point it out. I don't really care. And some people like come in, somebody came at me a little hard over it. It's like, why are you criticizing? It's just a stupid 80s show. What do you think you're explaining to me?
Yeah, no kidding. That's not, I don't know. Why are you getting so worked up about a stupid 80s show then? You just kind of argued against yourself.
I'm not. I'm having fun.
Yeah.
You'll notice I'm not doing this from an ivory tower.
Yeah.
Like, this is all just for fun.
Yeah.
This is the joy that I have in my life. It's talking about Buck Rogers, Nowhere Man, and V.
What are there other shows you want to do?
There have been shows that I've been kicking around.
Yeah.
I've been debating doing there's a couple of TV movies that I've been kicking around doing. One of the things that's actually kind of tough is I didn't think I was going to be able to do all of V just because there's so many guns in it. And TikTok like will like take your ass down if you have just like I had this toy gun up here on this wall in the background, and the shape of this was enough for them to pull the video.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh man, because I've got people shooting like Mac 10s every other scene in V the Final Battle. And like what's that gonna be like? And the answer is I guess sometimes it's just not an issue. I don't
Yeah,
know.
they're not that consistent with that stuff. Hey, it's like sometimes they'll get all over you about stuff, and sometimes they don't seem to care.
Right.
Yeah, that's weird because I don't only ever use footage from trailers. Maybe that's why my stuff is always kind of safe because trailers have already been. But I'll put stuff with guns in it,
Yeah.
whatever the movie is that I've watched with guns in it. There's guns in the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah. Well, I started my entire TikTok page to promote a web series that I was starting in the first place, and then discovered eventually, actually very quickly, that TikTok's not great for doing it that way. TikTok is not great, weirdly enough, for advertising your work that's going to be on a platform that isn't TikTok, weirdly enough.
Yeah, and I find that every time the threat comes around to shut TikTok down, which happens frequently, everyone's like, "Follow me on Instagram, follow me on this," and I don't know that anybody's actually doing that, right? People seem to like just keep it on TikTok.
Yeah, I was working on it. It was a COVID show. It was a COVID version of Twilight Zone,
Oh,
and
cool.
called Stay Home. And so the first few videos that are up are like minute long snippets of that web series.
Oh, okay.
And one of them got taken down because one of the episodes was about gun ownership. The actor in question is a gun owner in real life, and was actually like, because the whole story is all about like as he's telling you this story, he's slowly assembling a handgun. Um, and that got pulled, weirdly enough. Got pulled from TikTok. I think because they do kind of recognize the sound of an actual gun.
Maybe. Yeah. It always seems to be, I'm always kind of questioning what possible. And the thing is, I don't want to worry about that kind of stuff. I just want to make the videos I want to make. I just want to have fun. And like when I read a trivia question for my cards here, and I have like this says like suicide or kill, right? Those are the words. Other people say unalive, and they see these words that you're not supposed to say because it'll get you down in the algorithm or whatever. And I'm like, I don't care about that stuff. I don't want to care about that stuff.
I mean, I stopped giving a crap about that a while ago because
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, it's like you covered Nowhere Man and V and Buck Rogers. You're gonna say the word murder a whole bunch. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it
like,
is what it is, right? That's just it's
yeah,
okay.
especially considering I'm one of those people who finds it really funny to say murder when it's like any form of killing in anything, even if it's like, like it's like I just murdered that ham sandwich. I just find it funny. I just
It is
love
pretty
the
funny.
idea of like there
You
being
just murdered my name. Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
I love the idea of like, oh, now we're bringing premeditation into this. Something I was listening to this podcast, the last episode,
Oh,
the most recent episode of this podcast, and your guest said something that's very true about how like we're all trying so hard to find the thing that makes the internet worthwhile uh for us. And I like, and it's funny because like we're all in everybody's peripheral with it. Like, we all have the ability to do a thing that somebody someplace that we have no idea who it is going to see. Like I do get recognized sometimes for Chad Vader. I do get sometimes recognized, but people don't know what it's from.
well, yeah. You people who may have just seen your TikToks and it just come across their feed, right?
Yeah, like Aaron, like I one of the videos I got to get Aaron Gray to be in one. I say I got to get, really my friend bought me a 2-minute chat, a 2-minute video chat with Aaron Gray, and she said it was okay for me to use the video and the thing. So it's not like we're buddies or anything like that. But like the first thing she said was like, "You look really familiar. Do I know you from somewhere?" I was like, "You're at a lot of conventions, Chad Vader," and she's like, "No, I don't think so." I'm like, "Well." So I can only hope that she's actually already seen one of my TikToks,
I'm
but
sure that's
she didn't
it.
know what that was, and I had to explain what TikTok was because she didn't really know what TikTok is
Do
really.
you find that happens quite a bit? When you talk, do you talk about this to your regular friends or people in your life?
Yeah, I found out that a lot of my wife's friends watch my TikToks secretly, which I
Okay.
didn't realize. But I do like, like it's hard. I mean, this is kind of the thing I've been doing more than anything else. It used to be writing plays and shooting movies that had gunfights in them, and why is there so much fake blood in the fridge? That used to be me. That was my whole thing. And now I'm just sort of all about like, ooh, maybe I could do something off the series Lucan, Otherworld. That's another one I'm considering. That's another Otherworld is a consideration. Salem's Lot, the original Salem's
Ooh,
Lot from the 70s,
yeah.
considering because Stephen King is pretty cool when people do fan stuff with his work. So
Yeah, but is it more like do you think about the possible audience for this, or you just worry like want something you can actually because you spend a lot of time with it, you want to love doing it, right?
I do. I mean, I do think about the audience, and I do like think about that. I feel like there's some ones like Alienation is another obvious choice to go with because you're covering a lot of the same ground that V covered. Yeah,
I have. Well, this is the movie. I have the movie, but I love the series. The series is awesome.
yeah. I love both the movie and the series. I know the movies. Movie has its flaws, but man, it brought the 4.54 Casull pistol into my life, and I can't really complain about that.
Right. Well, Rob, we're gonna have to wrap it up. We have less than a minute left, but thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you on the other parts of the internet?
You can find me on, you can find me usually just searching my name, Rob Matsushita. I'm going to be a guest on the show Welcome to the Basement.
Oh, that's like one of my
So,
favorite movie shows. I'll link to that as well. So you're subbing in for Craig, is that it?
yeah,
I should have known.
I'm going to be a guest host. One of the guest hosts while Craig is out. I don't know what the movie it is because that's the whole point.
Premise, yeah.
I just know that I'm going to be doing a movie in Sci-Fi July, so it'll be a sci-fi themed appropriate.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much, Rob, for being my TikTok friend. And Zoom cut us off before he could answer me. That is Rob Matsushita. Such a nice guy. I really had a great time talking to him. And you should follow him on TikTok if you don't already. And Welcome to the Basement. I can't say enough good things about that show. It is my favorite movie review show of all time. Just two guys sitting on a couch talking about movies. And Rob will be one of them in July. That's it for this episode. Come on back next week when I'll introduce you to another one of my TikTok friends.